Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm Fabian Calvo, Fabian for Liberty. FabianForLiberty.com is my website, also FabianCalvo.me. Remember, if you go to those websites and opt in, you'll be one of the first to receive my podcast, which comes out 2 to 3 times a week, kind of get more in depth on a variety of different subjects, including the one I'm going to talk about now, which are some comments made by Secretary of State John Kerry that really, I think, speak to the heart of the global economic reset that I've been calling on now for maybe almost 3 years. But first, let me just quickly talk about the Chinese devaluation. I did a whole video about this on Friday. And, there's a lot of people, I keep seeing it on YouTube and reading about it from people that I respect, saying that this is a currency war. And let me just say that it has all the hallmarks of a currency war. But currency wars, I think, were more in line when there was actually sovereign countries. And today, with the idea of the New World Order, or, call it what you want, you cannot dispute the fact, whether you want to call it the New World Order or whether you think that's a conspiracy theory, you cannot dispute the fact that countries are losing their sovereignty to a global order, whether it is a financial global order, whether it is a political global order. I mean, it is happening. It's so abundantly clear. And so, the fact is, we don't have that type of sovereignty where countries are fighting against each other in this currency war like we had prior to World War II or before World War I. Certainly, there's been currency wars, since then, in between those periods of time. And there may be players in these different countries that view it that way. But I have no doubt that the devaluation we saw from China is actually a central bank coordination, because central banks around the world, including the big four, which are the Bank of Japan, the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, and the People's Bank of China, they recognize that the global economy is beginning to go down in flames, and unless they do something about it, then everybody's going to suffer. And so what they do about it is that they take, in essence, like a Russian roulette of devaluation where they all take turns. And I talked about this on Friday. Just go back and look at how the ECB, which is the fifth one, the European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan, the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, how they all have been taking turns devaluating their currency in some way or another. They haven't all done it at once. Sometimes it has overlapped, but for the most part, they've staggered it. And I think that points to some serious coordination. And, this isn't just my thoughts. I get this from some people that I really trust that are, real in the big leagues when it comes to the financial world. So with that, I want to talk about something John Kerry said, because John Kerry was out there last week basically saying that if the United States, if Congress does not approve the Iranian nuclear deal, the U.S. dollar will lose its world reserve currency status. Now, he claims that because the other countries that have signed on to the Iranian nuclear deal, which include I believe it's the English, the French, the Germans, Russians, and the Chinese, that they will not go along with the sanctions, and they might not go along with the dollar as the world reserve currency because of the sanctions put on Iran. Think about the sanctions that were placed against Russia. Russia's still kicking. Russia's still getting ready to, defend its borders from Ukrainian aggression or from NATO aggression. However you look at it, Russia is preparing itself militarily. In fact, two top Pentagon guys came out last week saying in the sustained war, they don't think they'd be able to defeat Russia. Not that they would lose, but that they don't think they'd have the maintenance and the stamina to be able to defeat the Russians. That's pretty big, right? But nonetheless, look at all the sanctions that were placed against Russia. Ultimately, who did it hurt the most? It hurt the EU. It hurt the EU the most. That's why you almost had Greece signing up with the Russians. It's why you had, the Baltic countries and a bunch of other countries really reeling from the counter sanctions, if you will, that Russia placed on food imports and all kinds of other things. So the world's fundamentally changed, and it has to do with the fact that the Chinese, Russians, and Iranians are building this, and a bunch of other countries as well, you could throw in Pakistan and India as well, are building this Eastern superbloc power house that I've talked about for some time. So I think for John Kerry to come out and say that, now the media that is covering this is saying that they are fear-mongering, like the more like right, conservative, Republican type based media. They're saying, they're fear-mongering, or Obama's saying there'll be war with Iran if we don't do this treaty. I'm actually for it. I don't want war. Clearly, the foreign policy that has been executed by the United States over the last 25 years, is particularly in the Middle East, has failed miserably, and every Republican candidate wants to double down and triple down on the same exact strategies. So, yeah, I think that if the Saudis, if the Israelis, if some of these other countries in the Middle East are so concerned about the Iranians getting a nuclear weapon, and if they have intelligence that that's what they're doing, let them deal with it. It's not our problem. Okay, we have enough problems. You want to talk about problems with nuclear weapons? What about the fact that our borders are open and they could get a suitcase nuke across in a heartbeat? Just take the suitcase, put it under your arm, cross the Rio Grande, you're in. Okay? I think that's kind of a bigger problem. So the bottom line is that the idea of the world reserve currency status being lost has really been picking up steam where you have the Secretary of State of the United States now coming out and talking about that being a potential threat. Now, I don't think it's because of the Iranian nuclear deal. I think it started with the bilateral trade agreements. I mean, when you had China and Russia begin to engage in bilateral trade agreements, and then 17 days later, you had the Australians sign up. People are tired of this unipolar world where Washington, D.C. charges everybody basically like a percentage of their global trade, a brokerage fee almost, to Washington. They get it. It's a total scam. So that's what I have to say about that. Just want to remind everybody, I'd love to hear your feedback on this, and remind you that September 4th, I'm actually doing a webinar that's really a departure from all the other work that I've done. Maybe not that big of a departure because it deals a lot with personal growth. It's a process that I went through that's completely revolutionized my life, to be honest, that I did about 75 days ago. And I want to share it with everybody. And it's September 4th. The registration link is down below. If you really want to prepare, I think this is the best preparations an individual can take for themselves to get strong within and then be able to really do whatever they want in life in a positive, abundant filled way where we're not fearful about things anymore. Like, the stuff I just talked about isn't peaches and cream. I'm not fearful about it though. I'm just not living with rose colored glasses. So if you're interested in that, the link is down below, September 4th, 4 p.m. Pacific time. I'm Fabian Calvo, fabiancalvo.me, also fabianforliberty.com. Thanks for watching. I'm out.